Hey guys, good afternoon and welcome to the 330 Sports Show. My name is Justin Coffin. Today is Thursday, August 25th, 2022. So what is that? September, October, November, 4 months till Christmas Day. Wow, getting crazy. But football season is here. We're going to talk plenty of football today. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce you to a guest to help give us a Notre Dame perspective on Ohio State Notre Dame coming up next weekend. After that, we're also going to talk a little Cleveland Guardians baseball and Jacoby Brissett for the Cleveland Browns. So we will have plenty to talk to you about today. I'd like to first tell you that the 330 Sports Show and Youngstown Studio are brought to you by the Kat Miller campaign. Make sure to get out there and vote this fall and support Kat Miller. She does a lot of great stuff in town, and especially for the city of Struthers. And the segment is also brought to you by Alexis Smith DO. So appreciate both of them and their support for Youngstown Studio. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in our guest. His name is JJ Post. He is a Notre Dame student, and he also hosts a podcast called, correct me if I'm wrong, JJ, the Domercast. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. So you just got out of class. Am I right on that one too?
Yes, literally walked across the quad from my classroom. I'm in the student center now, where we have our studio set up there. So just a nice little 2-minute commute.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you joining us
on brand class, Irish literature.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I think if you were going for a stereotypical Notre Dame class, I probably picked a good one to come from.
Well, let's get to know you a little bit. Where'd you grow up, and why'd you choose Notre Dame?
So I'm from New Jersey, and I follow in the brand of a Catholic kid from the Northeast that grew up rooting for Notre Dame because, I love Rutgers. I grew up a Rutgers fan, of course, too. My sister plays soccer at Rutgers, so no disrespect meant there. I'm a Rutgers respecter.
Okay.
But growing up, I kind of had, Catholic parents that rooted for Notre Dame because they were the Catholic team. And, so that was kind of my upbringing. I was raised on a healthy diet of New Jersey pizza and TJ Jones. So, I really kind of had it in me from, I guess whenever I started watching football, I remember I went to my first game, I think when I was 10. It was, we played BYU for whatever reason. It was like 5 degrees, and it was just ridiculous. But that was kind of my introduction. Obviously, if you're, as a student, it's a fantastic school to go to. So when I got in, I just couldn't say no. I'm a fan, so of course that helped too. But really, more than anything, it's the academic element was really what appealed to me, just because, obviously who can say no to that?
And what are you studying there at Notre Dame?
I study political science, but I also have a journalism minor, and that's really what I want to do coming out of, coming out of college. So political science is my major. I'd say I'm a journalism student, though, above all else.
Okay. All right. Very good. And so journalism is what kind of realm are you looking to get into? Are you looking to get into sports, politics, news, media? What do you think?
Whatever employs me is what I always say, but I am a sports guy by trade. I'm obviously, pretty well rounded in terms of sports media at Notre Dame, but if that doesn't work out, I will go to wherever and whatever needs me. Very good.
Understandable. So tell us a little bit about campus and the vibes around, we're about 10 days away or 9 days away, I believe, from this game. What are the vibes around the Notre Dame campus?
I'd say cautious optimism is the best way to describe it. Obviously on the general whole, the optimism is very real because it's the Freeman era. Everyone's excited to see what the new coach has. There's obviously, as it's been well documented, new energy around the program. The recruiting wins obviously throughout the summer and throughout the spring have been huge. Everyone's excited to see what this team's going to look like under Freeman. But also I think there is a realism of it's game under a new coach, and we're playing a team that, in my view, is either the number 1 or number 2 team in college football. So I think there's also that kind of a bit of fear, like, okay, well, we get to start off against one of the best teams in the country, but what does that mean for a new coach who's going to have to coach his first real game against probably, the best or the second best opponent they could possibly have started off with? So I think everyone's excited for the season. Everyone's excited to see how the team looks over, an 11-game span, to see what the identity is, to see who steps up, to see what Freeman's coaching, kind of identity will be. But I think there's also some apprehension about, just how this first game is going to go, given the quality of the opponent and given the nature of a first-year head coach and a first-year quarterback.
Yeah, nothing like opening up your coaching career against your alma mater in your stadium where you played. And so, what's your vibes on Freeman? Based on what you hear and like how I've heard some quotes and seen some things, but that's kind of from an Ohio State lens. What's the vibes on Freeman? You guys sound like you love him up there.
Yeah, as a student, it's impossible not to love him. He's a guy that very clearly, I was lucky enough to meet him once to do I guess kind of the answer here is for my journalism class, we kind of had the crack pie idea. We're going to interview some coaches, and we sent like kind of a crack shot, like, hey, let's talk to Freeman. And he got back to us, which was kind of like a stunner in itself. But then in the 10 minutes he actually took to talk to us, he was personable. He was willing to answer questions from a bunch of, just kids in a J201 class, which is something I think, Brian Kelly's a fantastic coach, but I just don't think that's something he would ever do. So from a student's perspective, it's much easier to kind of feel like he's a guy you can root for. He's someone that is connected with the community, someone who's very personable. The idea of bringing pregame mass back was something that's very popular because it felt like that was kind of a unique element Notre Dame had that he kind of, that kind of got lost in recent years. Bringing that back is something everyone's very excited about because, obviously it's mass. No one's that excited about it, but it was one of the, the things that made Notre Dame, that Notre Dame had kind of lost over the last few years that Freeman's bringing back. So I think there's a lot of that, just the excitement that, it's someone that very clearly has a passion and energy, a willingness to be hands-on with both the community and the team that I think, we kind of lost under Brian Kelly. And Brian Kelly's a fantastic coach. I'm not one of the people that's going to hate on Brian Kelly, but I do think there are some elements, where you look at the practice reports and you talk about how Freeman goes around and talks to every player before practice starts and looks at every position group. I think, a lot of people read that and it's very hard not to be kind of, appreciative of the hands-on energy he brings compared to kind of the more laid-back CEO style of Kelly.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. I've never met him personally, but just seeing him interview, he conducts himself in a very professional manner and seems like he has brought new life to that program. And, again, I think you and I both agree that Brian Kelly was a great coach, the winningest coach in Notre Dame history, but he had his maybe limits that couldn't get over the top, and maybe this new guy can get there. So that shall remain to be seen. So JJ, let me we have a lot of connections in this game with Ohio State and Notre Dame. I was just, off the top of my head last night thinking, and obviously we got the Marcus Freeman connection, played at Ohio State. We have he brought in James Laurinaitis as I believe he's a graduate assistant there. A former 3-time All-American at Ohio State. Ohio State's athletic director, Gene Smith, was a former player and student at Notre Dame. And Al Washington comes over and is the defensive line coach. And then the last one I could think of were players actually in this game. You got Sonny Styles, a true freshman for the Buckeyes, and Lorenzo Styles, I believe, is a wide receiver for Notre Dame. So, do you get any of those vibes? Like this is almost like not a family affair, but kind of very familiar foes who don't really play often. What do you think about that?
Definitely. I mean, personally, I don't speak for the entire Notre Dame fan base here. I root for Ohio State to kick Michigan's ass every year. So I personally have that connection with the, Ohio State. Just I feel like for Notre Dame, I think especially under Freeman, Ohio State's kind of the blueprint he wants to build Notre Dame under. Obviously, there are some obvious differences. Ohio State, being a big state school, Notre Dame being kind of a small Catholic school, that those can't be reconciled. But I do think the idea of being a northern school who is going to have to go win recruit that acknowledges that you need to win recruiting battles in Florida. You have to win recruiting battles in Texas. And I think, Ohio State's one of the few schools, at least in this era of college football, that's been able to do that. And I think that's kind of the, by bringing in young, personable, energetic, recruiting-focused coaches like Al Washington, I think that's kind of the model that Marcus Freeman wants to build. He doesn't want to be kind of, a team that, like Brian Kelly was so good at, a team that brings in, the 3 stars, the kids from, Indiana and all over the Midwest, and, kind of just like is content to be good with those 3-4 stars and, just build off a good program. I think Freeman kind of has that, like, who knows if he'll be a better coach, but he definitely kind of has that mentality that, like, if we want to win a national championship, we're going to need to go down to Florida. We're going to need to go out to California. We need to go down to Texas and win battles against Alabama, against Ohio State, against LSU. I think that's kind of the, an element of recruiting that I think only Ohio State has really been able to consistently pull off, at least of the northern schools. So I think that's a pretty obvious, connection between the two, just in the way that, Ohio State has built their program and Notre Dame is looking to build their program back up. And of course, obviously there's the, the connections, you can't get away from it. The Styles family, obviously, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, both those players were recruited heavily by Ohio State and Notre Dame. Obviously, one chose Notre Dame, one chose Ohio State. Their father obviously being an Ohio State player himself. There's the element of the coaching staff. Freeman, obviously being an Ohio State guy. Al Washington, first year out of Ohio State. So I think, yeah, of course, there's a very big, theme of kind of like, I don't think it's exactly like it's Notre Dame Navy where there's kind of like explicitly, oh, we're going to, sing the alma maters together after the game. It's not like that. But I do think there is that interesting element of like, I don't think these two schools hate each other. I don't think there's like a dislike, even though they are two prominent schools within, 200 miles of each other. I don't think there's that level of dislike. So I don't think there's animosity, but I also think, there is that level of like, we're going to have some, mutual respect. We're going to have some level of mutual, we're going to have some level of shared bond on the roster between the players, between the coaches, just because there's so much connection there.
Yeah, I think those two words you said, mutual respect, are a vibe I'm getting, because this is two programs that are, like you said, I think they're 270 miles away from each other. So what is that, like a 4-hour drive or so? But, they've played on the field 6 times total, and, obviously 4 times in the past 30 years, but only twice in the regular season. So we finally get back to that. Hopefully this is a matchup we'll see more and more. And with that said, I have to ask you this question, because from a Midwest perspective, the Big Ten sort of is one of the, powerhouses in the country, Notre Dame being an independent. What's your thoughts on Notre Dame either perhaps joining a conference or staying independent?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's the, the $100 million question or whatever the number Swarbrick wants these days. But personally, I can go either way. I like the, I personally, I'm not a historian by any means, but I do like the fact that, one of the things that historically made Notre Dame was the fact they were independent. Obviously, I think most people know the story about how in the 1920s they wanted to be a Big Ten school. They couldn't get into the Big Ten. And then because they had to become this barnstorming team that had to play across the country, they were able to build that unique national identity. I do like that, that's part of kind of the myth. And, Notre Dame is a school kind of based off those football myths, the Newt Rockneys of the world, those classic stories that, the history of the program is what is the strength of the program. Notre Dame is a blue blood based off it being a powerhouse when college football was kind of in its formative years. So I do think that's kind of a unique element of independence that I can appreciate. And I know, it's not the flashiest thing in the world, and it's definitely not the most money-making, it's not the biggest moneymaker operation in the world, but I do appreciate it as someone who just kind of like, I think a lot of fans that, are appreciative of the school's history and how it became a blue blood can kind of appreciate that. But I also obviously see the, the benefits of the Big Ten, because, realistically, I think it's a fair assessment that college football is probably going the way of having 2, super conferences, and then everyone else is on the fringes. And there is that worry that either you're in or you're out. And I think Notre Dame is well aware that, you either get in the Big Ten right now, or if it's the I doubt it would be the SEC, but I guess you could technically say the SEC is an option. You either get in one of the 2 big ones, or you get out now and you accept your fate as we're going to give up a spot at the playoff potentially. So I think obviously a lot of it is contingent on how the next, several months of playoff expansion negotiations play out and what they get the feeling for what the environment is going to be once they expand the playoff. Is there going to be space for an independent team in that field? Is there going to be space for a team that perhaps isn't in one of these 2 conferences? I'm not really sure what that's going to look like, but I think that's going to obviously weigh heavily in the decision. From a cultural perspective, I obviously think the Big Ten is the natural fit. I get the ACC is technically our partner conference where the all the Olympic sports play and whatnot. But I do think, there's too much to ignore. Michigan, obviously a historical rival. Michigan State, I wouldn't call them a historical rival, but they're definitely a rival. Northwestern, frankly, if you go way back, were a team we had a big rivalry with. And frankly, I think it makes, perfect sense for them to be our rival. Purdue, we have history with them. Indiana, we've probably, there's just so many schools where even if it's not like Notre Dame, Michigan, where there's like a very clear rivalry there, I think there's so many schools where you can make the case that there is a rivalry or a storyline to be had there. It's hard not to say Notre Dame would be a cultural fit, especially when you're kind of putting your hands up and saying we're not just going to be a big state school conference anymore. If you're going to bring in the USCs of the world, I think it's hard to make the argument that Notre Dame is, it's not a cultural fit because, if this was 5 years ago, you could say, well, Northwestern was a founding member. It makes sense that they're the only private school, they're the only small school. Once you have USC in there, once you have Northwestern in there, I think it's hard to, just say Notre Dame doesn't fit anymore in that metric because I think it's clearly the only thing that matters these days is how close you are to the Mason-Dixon and also, how willing you are to be involved with the big boys and the big bucks of the game.
No doubt. Very, very well said. Very well said. So let's get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of this game. Let me actually put you in the shoes of Ryan Day. So if you are Ryan Day preparing to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, what's your biggest concern as the Ohio State coach looking to take on Notre Dame? So I guess sort of analyze the strengths of the Notre Dame football team if you can. And, however you want, if you want to go offense, defense, players, whatever you want to do.
I'll kind of cheat and not go offense or defense and just say in general, the trenches. I think, if you're Ryan Day, if you're looking at the one area where Notre Dame has the most distinct advantage, if there is one, it's going to be on the offensive defensive line. I think if there's an area where Notre Dame does, I'll be open here. I don't think Notre Dame is the best shot of winning this game. I think from a matchup perspective, it favors Ohio State. I think if there is an angle they win this game, it's because they take Michigan's blueprint from last year and they exploit a Jim Knowles defense that probably is going to still be kind of working out some kinks. And they run at it hard, and they win in the trenches, and they make C.J. Stroud uncomfortable in the pocket. That's going to be Notre Dame's best shot to win this game. And I think of Ryan Day, you're looking at an offensive line that obviously has two of the best tackles in the country in Joe Alt and Blake Fisher. You look at a defensive line that has probably one of the best, I don't know if it's the best, but one of the best edge rushing duos in Jason Adamalola and Isaiah Foskey. If they can make C.J. Stroud uncomfortable in the pocket, and if the offensive line can clear holes for the running back stable, I think that's how Notre Dame wins this game. And I think if Ohio State gets beat in the trenches, I think that's the one. If they can't give C.J. Stroud the time to light up Notre Dame's secondary, if they can't get in the backfield and make Notre Dame throw the ball, I think that's the game script where Notre Dame, really is the best shot of winning. And I think if I'm Ryan Day, I'm really focused on making sure, I don't think Ohio State's going to control the trenches just because Notre Dame brings back so much experience in the offensive line and has so much talent on the defensive line. But I do think if you can make that a net neutral, if you can make that, more or less average, then you have the best shot of winning this game because you can let C.J. Stroud be C.J. Stroud. And you can, make Tyler Buckner on the other side of the ball, throw the ball 40 times to win the game. And I don't think, that's something he has in his locker, at least not as a first game. That might be the player he is in 10 games, but in his first start, I'm pretty confident Notre Dame is not going to want him to throw the ball 40 to 50 times.
Okay. Now let's flip that a little bit. If you're Marcus Freeman, you kind of gave us some points from the Ryan Day side. If you're Marcus Freeman attacking this Ohio State team or looking to win, what's your blueprint to win here? As you mentioned, the Michigan game from last year, but I guess if you could elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think Michigan game is kind of the most clear blueprint for Notre Dame in the sense that they attacked on the run. They didn't, they played conservative. They, admitted that our quarterback is not going to beat you over the top, at least not aggressively, at least not constantly. We're going to run the ball between the tackles. We're going to make the linebackers work because I think, I don't know if this is going to be something that changed under Jim Knowles, but I definitely don't think in game one it's going to be that stark contract. Ohio State's linebackers last year, at least in my opinion, were not the fastest bunch. They weren't the most agile bunch. And I think if Notre Dame can, beat them to the tackles, beat them inside, make the linebackers make plays the second level, I think that's how they're going to want to win this game. They have Notre Dame's wide receiver core is pretty thin these days. I think they only have 6-7 scholarship wide receivers at least available for week one. So I think if you look at the running back court, you have Chris Tyree, who's, is probably not going to be a 15-carry bell cow, but he has a ton of speed and he has experience. You've got Logan Diggs, who last year looked really promising. You have Audric Estime, who is 230 pounds of sheer muscle. It's a running back stable that I think complements itself very nicely. You have flash, you have power. I think they're going to want to work that. They're going to want to get all of those guys involved, keep on giving Ohio State different looks, keep on making them make plays in the second level of defense. I think that's going to be how they want to win this game. On the defense side of the ball, I wish there was a more complex answer I can give you other than make sure C.J. Stroud doesn't kill you. I think that's kind of, the very underlying way of describing it because he's obviously the MVP of this game. He's a Heisman candidate. He's got all these weapons around him. If you can, either get in the backfield enough that he is constantly under duress, he's, has to look off his first reads. If you can make him, struggle to throw the ball, if that's in the backfield and sacking him, or if that's the secondary stepping up and having a big game, I don't know which one is more likely. I'd probably say it's the sacking him option. Sure. But if it's the secondary that decides to step up big time, either one of those options I think is how they're going to need to win the game on the defensive side of the ball. Make Ohio State do what they're going to do, which is pound the rock, run the ball, make them run at your front, make them run at Isaiah Foskey, Jason Ademilola, and make them beat you down low. Because if Ohio State gets to constantly throw the ball, CJ Stroud's dropping back into a clean pocket, he's going to pick apart this Notre Dame defense because he's going to pick apart just about any defense in the country. So I think that's where Notre Dame is going to really try to pound it, be it, getting into the backfield, making him stress, making him, throw the ball quickly, or, setting back, making him try to, pick apart a defense that is way back into coverage. Based off Freeman's defensive schemes, I'm going to guess they're going to go heavy on blitzes because he's an aggressive coordinator. He likes to get at the quarterback. But, if that means making CJ Stroud throw 2 seconds, 3 seconds into his read, I think that's something they're going to want and something they're going to try to, hail down on. Because if CJ Stroud, like I said, has a clean pocket, I think everyone knows, like any other defense, he's going to pick them apart.
Okay. All right. JJ, just a couple more, and then I'll get you out of here because I know you probably got to, you just got out of class, so you probably want some downtime to yourself. But give me for maybe an Ohio State perspective, give me 2 players on Notre Dame. Give me one on offense and one on defense. Maybe for the Ohio State fan that is not too familiar or overly familiar with the Notre Dame roster. So give me a player to watch on offense and give me a player to watch on defense for the Fighting Irish.
On offense, I'll go with Lorenzo Styles just because, for one, it's the obvious narrative pick. He's kind of a player that obviously has deep Ohio roots. He's brothers in the team. His father's an Ohio State legend. I think that's kind of one of the things. I don't know if legend, but his father played for Ohio State. But I think that's obviously from the narrative perspective, it works. And also, I think he's going to have a very big role in this Irish team this year. This is an Irish team that doesn't have a clear boundary receiver at the moment, at least not one that has emerged. And that probably means they're going to rely heavily on speed. They're going to rely heavily on a lot of slot concepts. And Lorenzo Styles is that guy that if they go in the slot, if they focus on, guys that can make plays on the interior of the field, he's going to be that guy. He's very versatile. They've used him in run end around concepts before. They've used him out in the open field. I think they're going to give him a really big role because he's one of the only receivers from last year that is back from this year. And I think he's set to be kind of their main option, just because, for one, there's obviously a lack of options. But for two, he obviously showed a lot of talent as just a freshman last year. And I think, they're ready to let him free. I think, one of the things that Tommy Rees showed in the first game under Mark Stream, at least in that Fiesta Bowl, was he's going to let this offense run a bit. He's going to open it up. And I think if they open it up, it's going to benefit Styles a lot because Styles is a player that has open field speed. He's got kind of that size to also be a factor if they want to use him on the boundary. So I think his versatility, his, kind of youthfulness and the ability to make stuff happen in the open field, he's going to be a player that I think really has a breakout year this year. And I think Ohio State, obviously, because he's back home, could be a natural coming out party. On defense, I'm going to go with Riley Mills. He didn't start last year because of, just the amount of talent on that defensive line, but he did get in one game against Virginia, and he had 2 sacks, a tackle for a loss, and by all accounts, in the spring and in the summer, he's been a huge presence in camp. He stepped into that role really nicely on the weak side. And he's a player that I think, obviously the physical tools are there. He's fast for his size. He's big. He's strong. He's showed a presence, at least on film and in the games he has gotten into, to get into the backfield and be a disruptor. But I also think he's got that kind of natural leadership about him. He's a player that I don't think is going to struggle for confidence making his first start in the horseshoe. I think if you ask, if you're Notre Dame, and the biggest thing you can ask for of your first-year starters is to play with confidence, to play with swagger, I think Mills is a player that you're not going to have to worry about that, for them. So I think he's a player that's going to move right into the starting lineup. He's not going to have to worry about adjusting. He's going to be right at home. And I think he's also, just because teams they're going to have to focus so much in on Ademilola and Foskey, he's going to have a lot of opportunities to get mismatches, to get in the backfield. If you can make the most of those, Notre Dame's going to have a good shot at this game.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. All right, JJ, last, I got 2 more questions and I'll get you out of here. 1, Notre Dame, Ohio State related, and 2, totally off topic. But so let's just say, next year, fans are coming in for the 2023 game from Columbus or wherever from Ohio. Tell them, give them a place. I've been to the campus, a bunch of times, but from someone that lives there, that goes to school there, give them a place to eat or drink, and give them a place to visit on campus. So I guess a food/bar recommendation and a campus recommendation.
All right, so from the food bar recommendation, I think Brewburger is the number one spot to go, just because I'm not going to send you to any of the crappy freshman bars. It's in a nice little convenient location. It's you can walk it from campus, which is kind of, Notre Dame's campus is weird in the sense that the campus itself is very kind of isolated from South Bend as a whole, but they do have like this connector street called Eddy Street. There's a bunch of good options there. Brew Brothers is my favorite on it, just because it's a nice little burger, pub place. They've got good food. Obviously, there's a nice little bar. I think that's kind of, I guess your kind of go-to option, just because it's I wouldn't say it's cheap, but it's also not like, it's not like, listen, I'm from Jersey, so I've had to deal with a lot of ups, kind of way too expensive bars. It's not one of those, which I appreciate. And in terms of on campus, the homer pick is obviously kind of the obvious one. Touchdown Jesus. It's obviously the iconic image when you think of Notre Dame. When you think of Notre Dame football, you think of Touchdown Jesus. The view is great. Obviously, it's really cool the way they set it up. Right when you come out of the stadium, you can see it. It's kind of the obvious pick. I think the Grotto is actually the slightly cooler, if less symbolic spot on campus. If you're someone that kind of likes that kind of, obviously if you're someone who doesn't love the religious element, you're probably not going to love Notre Dame's campus. If you're someone that likes that kind of, religious integration with the campus, the Grotto is really cool. It's just a very peaceful area. It's a very quiet space, which I think on game day, it's not something you really can get a lot, because, obviously everyone's out bustling, everyone's chatting about the game. Sure. If looking for somewhere that's just kind of like a very natural spot, it's very scenic. They've got a nice view of the lake there. I think it's very pretty. I think it's somewhere that if you're looking to get away from what every other college campus will have on a game day, which is just a loud crowd, the quad's bustling, they'll probably have game day out there. If you're looking to get away from something that every other college campus will have, the Grotto is probably a good place to be, because I don't think there's a day in the year, whether it be Christmas, be it Notre Dame game day, or really any other day, that the Grotto is not going to be peace and quiet.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, JJ, appreciate that. But before I let you go, and this was totally just random. Since you mentioned you were from New Jersey, I just got to ask you, are you a Sopranos watcher?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And
I think that's legally required, actually.
Let me just ask, because Youngstown here, Paulie, even from The Sopranos, ends up in jail in Youngstown. I think it was like season 4. I just finished the series from the first time. Is that an accurate depiction of northern New Jersey? What say you?
It depends. Some of it, yes. Like there are some areas where, like, like if you think of the meme where it's Leonardo DiCaprio like pointing at a screen, like, oh, that's me. Like there's a lot of that in it, because they'll show like kind of iconic places in North Jersey, and you'll be like, wow, the stereotype is right. That is somewhere I totally go fairly often. And then there's also elements where it's like, okay, I'm Italian, but I'm not that Italian. Which I think is kind of like the it's a pretty fair depiction, I'll say. It depends on what side. Some of my family will probably be pretty unhappy with me answering that. The other family will be delighted that I said that much. But I'd say it's a pretty fair depiction.
All right. Very good. Well, JJ, thank you so much for joining us, especially
Thanks
on short notice. JJ, again, a Notre Dame student, and tell them if they want to find some more Notre Dame information, where they can follow you and your podcast.
Yep. So I'm on Twitter at JJPost, JayJayPost. I run a podcast called Domercast, Domer cast. That's kind of the main outlets. I am everywhere in Notre Dame student media. So if you're listening to the radio, listening to ESPN Plus, watching Notre Dame television, or reading the student newspaper, you'll probably find me in there somewhere. But yeah, if you happen to listen to any of that rambling and take away from it that I'm somewhat intelligent or coherent, I don't know how you did that, but you can find me on Twitter at JJPost.
Very good. Very good. Well, JJ, thank you again. And as a Buckeye grad and fan, I wish you mutual respect and good luck for the game. And what was that place called? Brew Beer or
Brew Burgers?
Well, in 2023, if I see you around, I'll buy you a beer.
Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, JJ. Have a good one. All right. So we appreciate JJ for joining us. That was kind of we wanted to give a fair look. We give a ton of Ohio State perspective on the show. Wanted to give a little bit of insight into Notre Dame, Coach Freeman, and what they're bringing into Columbus this year. Should be a good, solid game. The point spread as it stands now, last I had checked, was 14.5, which is very, very high point total. But if we look at the overall all-time series, Ohio State is currently leading that 4-2. Only played 6 times. And as you can see on the graphic, only 270 miles separate these two schools. But again, only 6 games in the all-time history going back to 1935 and 36. Notre Dame wins the first two. First one in Columbus, 18-13. Notre Dame wins that. In 1936, Notre Dame comes in, that hosted that game in South Bend, wins 7-2. So hit a grand slam and a 3-run home run, and Ohio State could only muster up, 2 points in that game. But very interesting. So you kind of go, you have the two games in the 90s. Ohio State was they were favorited, or a favorite in every game they've played the last 4, but have covered the spread in each one of those games. They will obviously play coming up September 3rd, and then the following year, next year, in South Bend. So that should be a good matchup. If you did not watch our show on Tuesday, we had a great Ohio State beat reporter on, Steve Hellwagon, who broke down a lot of Ohio State and his expectations this year. And JJ obviously gave us the the Notre Dame perspective this year. So let's look real quick at some of these historic matchups, some of these number totals. So wins all time. Ohio State is third with 942. Notre Dame is fourth, right behind them at 929. Notre Dame is second all time with 11 national championships. Ohio State with 8. Consensus All-Americans. Notre Dame first all time, number 1, 105. Ohio State is second, behind, still 15 guys behind them with 90. Heisman winners, they both have the most with 7. NFL draft picks, Notre Dame 522 all time, which is first. Ohio State 479, which is third. But if you look at first round picks, Ohio State obviously has that elite top end talent. They have the most first round draft picks all time with 87. Notre Dame was 70, which is fourth all time. And Ohio State, 950 weeks in the AP poll all time. Notre Dame is fourth all time. And then weeks at number 1 in the poll, Ohio State, 105 weeks spent at number 1 in the poll, which is second all time. And Notre Dame slightly behind, just at fourth. But just look at all those numbers and you put into perspective how many college teams are in this country and the historic precedents that these teams have set and will continue to set going forward. So that's a look at Ohio State and Notre Dame. Hopefully you guys, we'll dig deep into that and hopefully take something from that. We will have obviously more for you next week. Next week, we're going to do a little bit different. And I'm going to have Joe come in now. But Joe, can you tell them a little bit about what our plans are for next week? I know the Canfield Fair is coming, and that's obviously next to the Ohio State Fair in Columbus. This is actually the second largest fair in the state of Ohio. Hundreds of thousands of people through the gates. So tell them a little bit about what Youngstown Studio is doing down there.
So we fought for almost a decade to be included as a real boy, right?
Yeah.
And so we finally got placement on the media concourse along with the television stations and whatnot. And we're going to be broadcasting there for a whole week. And it's not going to be our normal programming. We have the ability to be in front of our listeners and, inviting new listeners to our platform. There's like 100,000 people that come through this festival on those 7 days. That is a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. So like you said, not our typical normal programming, but we're going to be like pulling some people. I think we're right by WFMJ. So hopefully bring some of those guys in. If you guys are around the Canfield Fair, just stop down and say hi. Joe's going to be there. I'm sure the majority of the time. I'm going to kind of be filtering in here and there. I will also be in Columbus for the game next weekend, but I hope to be there at least 4 of the days, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, Monday. But if you guys see the tent, see the booth, come up, say hi. And if you want to get behind the mic, maybe we can even work something out. But
we could be as mischievous as we want to. We could do anything we want at any time.
Now, with all due respect to people that go to the fair too, if you follow people of the fair on Facebook or whatever, it's very entertaining. But
that's our goal, is to be included on that group.
So I'm gonna wear some assless chaps. And
yes!
we went from talking about the wonderful grotto at Notre Dame to assless chaps in about 3 minutes. So
that was you, man. I was being sincere, and
that's true. So what time? Because I'm kind of walking into this blind a little bit too. So what are your expectations? What do you want to get out of this fair experience? And maybe for someone out there watching that maybe has a good story to tell, can they be involved in this too?
Well, there's so many interesting things that happen, and it's so big, and there's so many people. Like, I want to meet interesting people that have stories to tell,
Yeah.
and that's everything from the 4-Hers who,
Yeah.
spent an entire summer raising chickens,
Yeah,
to
right.
sell. I want to meet weird, interesting people.
Animals. I love animals.
Yeah.
As long as I don't have to clean up their crap, then bring them over.
That's
Bring
it.
them over.
But I mean, we're going to have a lot of the booths are going to be having some local celebrities. So we're
Yeah.
going to invite them over to talk, even politicians, get them sparring in our,
Sure,
our
yeah.
grudge match ring. So
Kelly Pavlik, I believe you said, is going to be there.
Be out there for a little bit.
Very good. So, come out, talk to Joe, talk to me, whoever else might be there.
If you don't talk to us, we're going to come find you. I got a
that's true.
microphone that I will find you.
Okay. Yeah. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. And, it's a great excuse to go eat unhealthy for a day or a night or whatever, but should be entertaining and definitely looking forward to it. 147th year or something like that. Crazy. But it's very cool. Something to look forward to. So look for the Youngstown Studio tent banner. I'm not exactly sure the setup yet, but look for that at the Canfield Fair coming up.
It'll be a spectacle.
I mean,
all these lights down here, going down.
Yeah,
there,
I mean,
it's going to be
it's
going to stand out.
The things that we have like off camera here are just phenomenal. If you guys have never been to Youngstown Studio, like legitly, I'm looking at 3 huge flat screens. I'm looking at microphones. I'm looking at a stage. There's all this equipment back here. It's going to be good stuff. So it's and there's probably some performers out there that we can put in front of a mic that might be good entertainment. So we'll see. So we're gonna have some fun with it. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit back to sports. Let's get with the Cleveland Guardians. They are playing some dynamite baseball. Here are some real quick stats I want to throw at you guys. So first of all, the Indians, swear jar dollar, Guardians, 66-56, the youngest team in Major League Baseball. And if you even throw in AAA baseball, they are in first place in the American League Central. They are now 4 games ahead of the Minnesota Twins and Chicago White Sox. They have the best record in the American League since the All-Star break. This is a really cool fact, and these are little Jose Ramirez stats here. Since 1954, so what is that, 70 years ago, 68 years ago, only 6 Cleveland players have reached 100 RBIs within the team's first 121 games. Jose Ramirez just accomplished that. So Jose Ramirez, Travis Hafner, Jim Thome, Juan Gonzalez, Manny Ramirez, and Albert Bell did it 3 times. So that is a hell of a list to be on that Jose Ramirez is on. He's quickly becoming one of the best Cleveland athletes out there. Another great stat for you about Jose Ramirez. Cleveland hitters with 20 or more career multi-home run games. Albert Bell did it 26 times. Jim Thome also did it 26 times. Hal Trotsky 25 times. Manny Ramirez 22 times. Joe Carter 21 times. And Jose Ramirez just joined it with his 20th time on that list. So very, very good company. Jose Ramirez climbing the charts of an all-time Cleveland great in really any sport, baseball, football, basketball. Just love that guy. Love the swagger. Love the energy he brings to the team. So real quickly, I want to go over the leaders because, obviously Jose Ramirez means the most to this team, but a lot of other guys are helping carry that flag for the Guardians. So leading the team in runs is Jose Ramirez and Ahmed Rosario with 69 each. Ahmed Rosario actually leads the team with 135 hits on the season. Ramirez has 37 doubles. Rosario has 7 triples. Ramirez with 25 home runs. Ramirez 103 RBIs already. 48 walks. How about this? Andres Jimenez, 16 times this year he's been hit by a pitch. That's incredible. So, and this dude's an all-star, but I mean, obviously can take a hit with getting hit 16 times. Jimenez and Miles Straw lead the team with 15 steals. And then Jimenez as well with a 309 batting average. I have not looked at Frankie Lindor's numbers lately, but Jimenez, along with Ahmed Rosario, were two of the main pieces in that trade. And Jimenez is already paying dividends with that trade. So love to see it. They are back in action with Seattle. Actually, in just a few minutes here, they'll be playing against the Mariners to hopefully keep that winning streak up. All right, on the pitching side of the things, let's look at what the Guardians have been doing. Cal Quantrill leads the team in wins with 10. ERA in the bullpen leader, Emmanuel Clase, is absolutely on fire. He has a 1.20 ERA in 52 and 2/3 innings. Shane Bieber getting back to that ace that we know he can be, a 3.1 ERA in 145 innings. Tristan McKenzie also right behind Bieber with a 3.12 ERA. Clase leads the league, or I believe is tied with the league lead in saves with 29. Strikeouts, Bieber's up there with 144. And then Emmanuel Clase is whip. And if you're not familiar with whip, that's walks and hits per inning pitch. So he is his walks and hits per inning pitched is 0.65. So that means every 3 innings, there's only two players getting on base, which is pretty fantastic when you put it into perspective like that. So the Guardians lineup and their pitching staff doing great things. And hopefully, I actually just got an alert. They're about to start here in a few minutes. So again, 66 and 56. I want to give some credit to the bullpen here because Clase, Karinchak, Nick Sandlin, and Trevor Stephan are really, really carrying the water for this bullpen. And then also Tristan McKenzie and Cal Quantrill with great starts this week for the Guardians. So they are playing phenomenal baseball into the month of late August, almost getting into September. So we are in the final sprint now in the baseball season, less than 40 games to go. And, all these games mean something for the tribe, Guardians, Indians, whatever you want to call them, Cleveland baseball team. But I don't care if you're, stuck on the old name or not. You can root for this team because they are fun to watch. And they've had 14 players this year make their major league debut. That tells you how young, on a 26-man roster, how young this team is, and they're only going to get better going forward. So love to see it. Great things happening in Cleveland. Let's go to the other Cleveland team that is about to start here soon. We're about 2 weeks away from the Browns home opener. The Browns season opener. They will take on the Chicago Bears this weekend on Saturday. But, we've talked a lot about Deshaun Watson. We've talked a lot about the roster. But, Joe, I thought this would be a good time to just talk just a little bit about Jacoby Brissett, because a lot of people know the name, but they don't really know much about him. And, they've heard about him here and there, but we haven't really spent a whole lot of time talking about him. And I thought this guy is kind of the perfect dude for this situation. So I guess, Joe, what coming into this season, what do you think about Jacoby Brissett, whether you know a lot about him or don't know much about him at all? Just your overall thoughts before the season starts.
All right. So before you were married, you ever have friends that try to set you up, and they always tell you about that girl that they know that you'd be perfect for?
Sure.
Well, this is sort of like what Jacoby Brissett is. We haven't dated yet. Don't even really know much about him. Everybody tells me how great this is going to be, but let's go on a date first.
Okay. All right. I like it. That's a good analogy with Jacoby. I think everybody's got a lot of good things to say. They just did a 2-day scrimmage and practice with the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Sirianni is the Philadelphia Eagles coach. He was formerly with him in Indy, and he just speaks so highly of him. He was actually the Indianapolis Colts, I think in 2020, their nomination for Man of the Year. So that is, by all accounts, the most prestigious honor an NFL team can give one of its players, saying, you transcend the sport, you are just a great person. So, so Jacoby Brissett is well liked, well thought of in the NFL community, and I would argue a top 5 backup in the league. You can throw out a lot of different names. There's a lot of bad backup quarterbacks out there, a lot of bad ones. The Browns are in a really good situation with Jacoby Brissett as their backup quarterback. Now, as their starter, he's probably, in the 20s somewhere, based on starting. But I just want to give you a little bio about him, and then we can talk about some of maybe what our expectations might be. So just to, a little bit of bio on him. He's 6'4", 235. He is 29 years old. He was a 3rd round pick in the 2016 draft from North Carolina State. He's entering his 7th season in the league. 14-23 career record as a starter. Now, that record is not great. However, if you put it into perspective, he was put into some really bad situations on some really not so great teams. So, that record and a quarterback record, we can argue all day long about this. I don't think quarterbacks' records are an individual stat. I think that's a team stat because, one, you're on the field 50% of the time. We all know quarterbacks can win you games, but they can also lose you games, but they are not always the reason you win or lose that game. So I don't like saying, you can put the label on him of record and whatnot, but I don't think a quarterback win-loss record is indicative of maybe the type of play all the time. Now, he started his career backing up Tom Brady. He also was then traded to Indianapolis. And Andrew Luck, who a lot of people remember, he was a first-round draft pick, first pick overall in the draft, a great player. And then all of a sudden, just straight up retired after like 7-8 years in the league. And what do? They have to throw in Jacoby Brissett, and that was not a great Colts team. He did his job, did the best he could, eventually moved on, played last season in Miami. So his career numbers, he has thrown for roughly a 60% passer in the league. If we could get that up to about 65%, I think that's probably what the Browns are looking for. And he's thrown for about 7,700 yards. But the stat I really like is a 36-17 touchdown to interception ratio. So that's that's definitely better than 2-1 there with that ratio. So if the Browns last year had a 2-1 touchdown ratio, they probably win a lot more games. And again, I'm not pointing the finger at Baker, but I'm also saying if they had a 2-1 touchdown ratio last year, they win a lot more games. So, Joe, what are your expectations of Jacoby Brissett? He's not going to be Deshaun Watson. He's, not going to be, take your list of one of the terrible Browns quarterbacks we've had over the years. He's probably going to be somewhere in between. So I guess your expectations for him this season.
It's very low. I think, beginning of the season when all teams are healthy, you can lean on some of your talent and get you out of predicaments. Later on down in the season, you're going to need the quarterback position to carry you through the rest of it. So then I'm if things are going super well, then there's hope that Watson could come in there and be the leader that he is. But I think he's going to do all right. I think honestly, like we talked about in previous shows, given the chance to prove yourself on that field and knowing that you've got a stretch of 10 plus games that you're going to be able to show your stuff, I think he's all money.
Okay. And that's kind of what I think the Browns are looking for. They're looking for him to, I hate the term game manager, but that's probably fitting here. You rely on your defense, you rely on your run game, you make a few plays to move the sticks on third down, you get yourself in scoring position. And if the Browns ideally could score 20 points a game, I think that's good enough for the defense to win a few of those games. And
what a year though to have like a running back room like we do.
I know. Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, what? Chubb, Hunt, Dearness Johnson, Jerome Ford. You can even throw the rookie, second-year guy from UCLA in there. They are stacked. And my question is, I wonder if one of those guys gets moved here, whether it be a Kareem Hunt or a Dearness Johnson in a trade, because they're kind of working
Well, do
Ford.
some creative. Keep all the running backs and do a 5 running back set. Well, that would be sweet.
Yeah, I mean,
Never been done.
they can all block for each other. Yeah, the quintuple wing. I've heard of the triple wing. I've heard of the double option, whatever you might say. But yeah, the Browns are very blessed at the running back position. They obviously have Amari Cooper. They got in Njoku. The wide receiver room is still a little bit to be desired. We will see how that all shakes out, but I think there's a lot. I think it's probably, again, somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's elite, but I don't think it's as bad as some people are making it out to be. Amari Cooper is a great wide receiver, for the Cowboys, formerly of the Raiders, and I think he's going to do big things in Cleveland. And, the goal is, as we said before, the Browns, if they can get to 6-5, and those first 4 games are very, very winnable, that's sort of the goal. So
is that your official prediction for his?
I'm not going to
tenure?
set a prediction yet, but I'm going to just say, I think optimistically, I think they can be 7-4, and I think 4-7 is the floor. So I'm going to say 4-7, 5-6, 6-5, or 7-4, somewhere in that range. If they're below that, that's obviously, they're out of the playoffs. If they are above that, we'll take it. No complaints. So I'm going to say somewhere in that range. And I know that's kind of weaseling around the question, but I'll have more of an opinion closer to next weekend, before the game week when we're
so do you think because our division, like the quarterback shakeup with, you got Trubisky, you got Jackson, you got Joe Burrow, there's no bellwethers in our division anymore. You know what I mean? Do you think that shakes up because we play these guys twice, if it gives us a better chance or a worse chance?
Well, I mean, when you put Watson in there, Watson, Burrow, and Jackson, you could argue those are 3 top 8 quarterbacks in the NFL. However you feel on the 3 of them. And then, the Steelers, you can say what you want about them, but their defense is still going to be good. Mm-hmm. They still have a great coach, so there's going to be a lot to be said. But the AFC North it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and it's going to be one of the best divisions in football. The AFC West will be one of the best divisions in football, if not the best. So I think a lot of the AFC is going to be beaten up on each other, and I think you could see a playoff team sneak in at 9-8. I really do. And the Steelers made it last year. I think they were like 9-7-1. So it can be done. But I think the key for the Browns is, get through those first 4 games relatively healthy, and hopefully 3-1 or 4-0. 4-0 is very optimistic and maybe not realistic, but we'll see on that.
So has Antonio Brown, has he gotten in his UFO and gone back to his home planet yet?
He put out some weird ass quote last week that I read, and I was like, I'm just not giving this guy the time of day. He was a great wide receiver when he was around, but man, he is cuckoo. Yeah, he's a little different. And I toe the line of saying I feel bad a little bit, maybe if there's like some CTE or some serious brain damage going on. But that guy hopefully gets some help, because he, like you said, he's a little bit of a nutty guy. So I don't know what he's doing, but I don't think NFL teams want to touch him right now. And honestly, if he was a normal guy, I'd be like, Browns, go out and sign him. But he's just, you don't want that guy in your locker room. So especially with the Watson stuff that's going on, it's like, that's the last thing they need is another distraction. You got a new one every day, man. Every day. I love it. And you always catch me off guard. So final thing I want to get here. Let's get back to the sweet innocence of high school football real quickly. And I apologize. I did not make my graphics in time, but I will share them out on social media. But Steve Leslie from YSN shared his top performers of week 1. And I'm just going to go over those guys real quickly. Vinny Ballone of Lowville, 296 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 146 yards rushing, and a touchdown rushing. So, 7 individual touchdowns there. Pretty darn good there. Brock Lowry, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the state of Ohio this year, from Canfield, 196 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns, and 166 yards passing for the Canfield Cardinals. Drew DeShields. I just saw Drew DeShields committed, I believe it's Eastern Illinois. That is the same school that produced Tony Romo and Jimmy Garoppolo. So he is committed there, I believe, to play quarterback as well. So maybe he can follow in their lineage. But Drew DeShields of West Branch, 277 yards passing, 4 TDs, 145 yards rushing, and a touchdown on the ground as well. DJ Williams of Fitch. Last weekend, they took on a team from outside of Las Vegas. 97 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 receiving touchdown. And I apologize if I mispronounced this name. Alex Chiavi of Jackson Milton, 7 touchdown passes in the air. Jackson Erickson, also of Ursuline, 178 yards passing with a touchdown and 55 more yards rushing on the ground with 2 touchdowns rushing as well. So Steve's top games of week 2. Canton McKinley at Austintown Fitch. That should be a great matchup. Cheney at Boardman. Cheney is led by head coach that was previously at Boardman last year, so might bring a little animosity into Spartan Stadium this year. So Cheney at Boardman. Garrettsville Garfield travels to Lakeview. Geneva travels to Struthers. We have Brookfield taking on Springfield. Newton Falls at Jackson Milton. Parma Padua at Ursuline, so down here at YSU, and South Range at the University School. So those are Steve Leslie's game of the weeks, or games of the week. Let me get some proper vernacular down there. But you can catch those games on YSN Live. They do a phenomenal job. I saw something they put out. It was like 90,000 people watched over all their different games last weekend. So pretty awesome for them, and a great service really to the community to check out some of these local high school athletes. So with that said, I'd like to thank Steve Leslie for sharing that information with me. I'd like to thank JJ Post, again, a Notre Dame student, host of the Domercast, to give us kind of the Notre Dame perspective. And also Joe for joining us, and obviously just being a great producer and owner down here of Youngstown Studio. So hopefully we will see you guys next week at the Canfield Fair. I'll have a show for you on Tuesday, and then we will be remotely. So make sure to follow us on social media at Youngstown Studio and at 330 Sports Show, all over the different platforms. So appreciate you guys. Enjoy your weekend, and we will talk soon.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos